West, y'all.
I think with Foster, everyone's he's been a bit of an uproar, and for during his tenure as well. So there's been no secret that a lot of people would like some change, and some also of the camp that believe that Foster wasn't the right choice, even for the amount of time that he's been in charge, having graduated from being an assistant coach after Steve Hansen's tenure to taking over the realm. I think for me, look, you have to dissect it and look back at our previous coaches, Steve Hansen and Graham Henry, leading up to becoming who we have now in Foster. And so, we tend to forget Graham Henry coming in, having coached Wales, didn't have the greatest record as well with Wales. Yes, we know of the record that he had and the accolades that have come his way since taking over the All Blacks, but then also the dark times during the loss in 2007 World Cup. Him getting that second chance to lead us into the home cup in 2011. We all know how that eventuated, but coming from that dark time in 2007 when they were knocked out in versus France 18-20, who would have thought that Richie McCaw would become the leader and the player that he was after that loss in the early times of his captaincy, and in such a time when we thought people were calling for him to be ousted as a captain, as a player, because he didn't have what it took to be able to win that match when it was down to the wire against France. 2 points we lost by, and he was pardoned by the public. He was pardoned by the rugby community to be able to still be the captain and then become the legend that he has. Had he not been given that chance, we could have been talking about a different Richie McCaw. And the same light with Graham Henry. He was the coach from 1998 2002 with Wales, and then took up the reins in 2004 for the All Blacks. And he came in and he finished with an 85% record, which is nothing to be sneezed at out of 103 tests. So very, very successful. But he lost 15 times in that tenure, and 5 times against Australia, 2 times against France, and 8 times against South Africa. And Australia and South Africa, understandable because they play the volume that they play each other. There's going to be some losses. We have to accept that. So 15 losses in his tenure as head coach. But then he's got that little blight, the 2007 Rugby World Cup. But all is forgiven because of that 1-point win that they had in the Rugby World Cup in 2011. But prior to that, they had lost 4 tests in 2009 as well. So leading after 2007, they still had a few glitches leading up to 2011. And they lost 3 times to South Africa and once against France in 2009. But, obviously that 1-point win in 2011 defines him and gives him that knighthood. That would he have received that? Despite losing a World Cup in 2011, which was his last hurrah, would he have received based on the rest of his record? I guess we will never know. But I believe that 1 point pardoned not only him for the 2007, as well as Richie McCaw, but also, as we know, Steve McDonald, a few years before that. And that, he was ousted and he wasn't even considered a part of that campaign. And, we all knew what happened with the first 5s falling, Colin Slade, Aaron Cruden, and then Dan Carter before that. And then they had to call in our 4th stringer who was weight baiting. And now Stephen Donald enjoys, the repercussions or the butterfly effect from, being involved in that Rugby World Cup final. We move on to Steve Hansen, and Steve Hansen had a even worse record when he took over from Graham Henry. In 2002 to 2004, he had a 33% record. 30 tests, he lost 20 times. And then he became, he took over, inherited the team from Graham Henry 2012 through to 2019, and his record speaks for itself as well. But there was 10 losses in there, and we are quick to forget that, and we only really embedded in the current series with the Irish, but the 2 losses that we had against Ireland, the first 2 losses was under Steve Hansen's reign, and the first time that we lost to them at Soldier Field in Chicago, and that was a massive blight. And so that one, and I'll come back to that. But yeah, Steve Hansen had our two first losses against Ireland. He was the first coach to lose against Ireland. He was the first coach. Oh, then he also drew the 2017 British and Irish Lions series in 2017. And so, but his saving grace, he won the 2015 Rugby World Cup as the head coach. He was an assistant in 2011, but then he couldn't finish off with a three-peat as an assistant head coach. He bowed out in 2019, coming third after our loss to England. So, with a truckload of other awards and accolades, Steve Hansen has a great record as well. I can't recall what his record was for the ABs, but he was up there in the 80s, in the 80%, I think. And I'll just bring that for you. It is, yes, 86.92. So 10 losses in there, and those, like I mentioned, two against Ireland, and to be expected, South Africa and Australia. He only had three against Australia, two against South Africa, but very, very good strike record there out of 107 tests as well. So four tests more than Ted, but a good strike rate nonetheless. So, and then brings us to our man of the hour, Ian Foster. Yep, it's not a great record, but having looked at it, he's only lost five tests, six tests. Sorry. So out of his six tests, yes, he's lost three to Ireland, and that's two just in this series alone. But prior to that, even though people were calling for his head, even previous to the end of the last year, and then even for before this series even started, and obviously again, even more so as to why he shouldn't be the man to take us through to the next Rugby World Cup. But he's the man in charge. Three against Ireland. He lost one against Argentina in New Zealand, so the first to lose to Argentina here in home soil. He lost to France and Australia as well. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that I guess we just have to bide with him. Yeah, so I'm thinking, even though people are calling for his head, yeah, but just to be patient. He's only 24 tests deep so far, but this decline against Ireland, and I think Ireland is at front of mind as well because of the current series and our track record with them in the past. But I think the decline with in our results against Ireland have not only, but it started because we were unbeaten against Ireland. They talk about this 100-year record that we were undefeated against Ireland for 100 years. Yep. So the first ever test against Ireland was back in 1905 in November, back in 1905. And between in the amateur area up until 1995, we had played them only 12 times. No losses, but one draw in 1973. And then in the professional era, from 1997 through to 2013, we went unbeaten 15 times. But there were, in amongst those 15 wins, we had very, very close wins, and which we could have been upended by Ireland at any given time. In Carisbrooke in 2002, we beat them 15-6, and the following week we beat the Irish 40 points to 8. So it was very sporadic. Like it was inconsistent from the Irish, but they gave us at least one good test, and that was in 2002. In 2006 in Hamilton, we just lost to them 34-23, and then a week later in Eden Park 27-17. So they were getting very close, and then in between these close wins, there were some very big hidings, and where the All Blacks were convincing. In Wellington 2008, we beat them only by 10 points again, 21-11. But then on the end of year tour in Ireland, we beat them only by 22-13. However, the midweekers just lost to the All Blacks. All Black midweekers only beat Munster by 18 points to 16, only due to a Joe Rokothoka try in the last 4 minutes of the game where Ireland were leading 16-13. So, and again, the Irish public have been getting behind their team because then 4 years later in Christchurch at Rugby League Park, we only beat them 22-19. So it's almost like, we shouldn't have lost to Ireland. That's the grand theory. However, Ireland have been building. The teams that have gone before them have come close, but they've been building to moments like these, and especially the five wins that they've had. Um, the five wins that they had came to a head, especially in Dublin, when they had that 22-24 loss. The All Blacks were down 22-17, and it's a well remembered one in 2017. It was that Ryan Crotty try, the offload from Dan Coles, when the All Blacks were just going phase after phase, and it went into extra time in the 86nd minute. Ryan Crotty scores in the corner to bring the All Blacks home. And then we know what happened after that. And then Soldier Field happened in 2016, where the Irish won 40-29. And it's been since then. In 2018, again in Hansen's reign, they went down 16-9. And then again, 3 years later, 29-20, that's when the first loss to Ireland under the current head coach, Ian Foster. And then we've had the 12-23 and 22-32 losses this month. So I'm asking for patience. I'm asking for the same way that everyone got behind Steve Hansen in his dark times, the same way that people got behind Ted after losing a 2007 campaign with the legend that is Richie McCaw. However, they gave them another chance to take on another Rugby World Cup. Foster, despite his coaching resume prior to taking on the All Blacks as a head coach, there was none because he didn't have an NPC. Didn't have a Super Rugby record such like Hansen as well as um, Graham Henry. However, we all know that sometimes the pathways are different, and in this light, he's just been promoted from being the assistant coach to becoming the head coach, and he was part of those great regimes that I've mentioned because he was under as assistant to the Steve Hansen, and so he's had a good 10 years being part of a successful outfit, being part of the All Blacks in the coaching management setup. So why not give him a chance? Yep, he's been given that chance. It hasn't turned out the way that a lot of people would have liked, but like I mentioned, it's only been there was the draw. It was a draw against Australia. That's the draw that his first match, and then he went on to lose twice in the Tri Nation Series in 2020 against Argentina, or once against Argentina and once against Australia, and then he's had a loss against South Africa, Ireland, France last year, and then this year the two Irish tests after the first one, which was a convincing win again, 42-19. So who's the inconsistent one? Is it the Irish? Because they've had some close losses. They've had some massive hidings from us. But then in recent times, very recent as of this month, the All Blacks can poll on 42-19 against him, but then go on to lose 23-12. Under the circumstances of the card system that happened and that debacle that happened in the second test. But I'm putting a lot of down to their power play in the ruck area, their ball running, the intercepts that they grabbed, and it wasn't just intercepts by backs, it intercepts by loose forwards and locks, and it was that I believe that combination of the Ryans, the Vanderfleers, and the Birds, as well as there's another one that I'm missing, Tak. His name escapes me right now, but yeah. Their loose forwards, number 8, sorry. Is it Tuck Burn? Um, who's number 8? Yeah, so their loose forwards, I think they're just monstrous, and I think they're going to be um, the guys that will take them through because I think some of them not many of them have played 50 tests yet. And so that's where I think they've got a lot to show, and they're peaking just at the right time coming into next World Cup. Whether they've peaked early in the year prior to the World Cup, it's still another 12 months away, but they've got themselves in good stead.